Hey YouTube, welcome to Dragon's Dojo Gaming. I'm Andrew Sellers. Please like and subscribe for more content, and I'm about to show you guys my grade 3 Bruce deck profile. So I had this deck for a month now. I bought it from a really good friend. I made a few changes to the build once I got it. And as of right now, I am perfectly satisfied with the build I have set up for Violet Spruce right now. And now I'm about to show it off. First up, your ride line, Matt, Steve, Richard, and Bruce. Needs no explanation as to why this is the ride lineup for the deck. Next up for the triggers, 4 heal. Eventually, I'm actually going to be taking out 2 of the 15 heals for one of each of the heal triggers with additional effects. I run 8 crit in the deck. I run 8 crit because Bruce is a really force-reliant deck, and those extra crits will help add pressure to that force. 2 fronts. I run 2 fronts specifically because 1, 20k shield, and 2, pulling them at the time I need them is kind of, at the right time is kind of nice. And here are 2 strange things about my deck profile. I also run 1 Riley, 1 draw trigger, and 1 Cray Elemental over trigger. Reason I play the draw trigger at 1 in this deck is because usually I end up pulling it at times where I usually pull it on damage checks, and it's nice to have that extra defense when And the reason I run the over trigger in the deck is because board numbers will end up becoming a lot more overwhelming than the extra crit would be given to Bruce from the Dark States over trigger. But this is just my personal preference for the build. Next up for grade 1s, 4 Sentinels, 1 copy of Maple. Maple's really good because when she boosts your Vanguard, Bruce, and if you're in Final Rush, you counterblast 1 and give your Vanguard an extra drive check for the turn. You can also use, and if you run out of counterblasts, you can send her to the soul with other units to give power and other effects like that. Next up, 3 copies of Queen Lu. She's a pretty good card. She's mainly there as an 8k booster and partially because her Sentinel restrict skill is kind of nice. Granted, it only lasts for one battle, but it's pretty good. And she's good for filling up the soul. Next up, 4 copies of Gear Double. After Double boosts a unit, I can send him to the soul, and if my Vanguard's in Final Rush, that unit gets plus 10k for the rest of the turn. And as many of you are aware, the deck only really goes off when you're in Final Rush, which we all know happens the turn after you first ride Bruce. Next up, 3 copies of Leonard. Leonard's a really good card because he's good for Soul Filter, and he's good for calling out rear guards that can make your that can either add more attack power or add boost power to your front row rear guards. 4 copies of Lily. Very good card, because when you're in Final Rush, when it's placed, you Counterblast 1, you Soul Charge 2, then you choose any unit from your soul and call it to an open rearguard. He's just super convenient to have. Fills up soul and gives you units. And now for grade 3s. 3 copies of Violence Bruce in the main deck. Obviously he's there for persona riding and adding extra power. And as many of you know, his other Vanguard skill says when it attacks, and if you're in Final Rush, Soul Blast 5 and restand your front row rear guards. Quite a powerful card. Next up, 4 copies of Marjorie. One of the best cards in the deck, because if you're in Final Rush once per turn when she attacks while on rear guard, you can choose one of your rear guards, send it to the soul, draw a card, then soul charge. The nice thing about her is that if you were to persona ride, then play Hellblast Full Dive, and then use her skill, each attack skill before attacking, she'd have 43 or 51,000 power on her first attack. And then on Bruce's attack, and then after restanding her from Bruce's skill, you could have her attack for roughly the same amount of power, even when you get triggers. So you're guaranteed. So her attack. So if you use her skill before Bruce's, her attack is guaranteed to at least be 43,000 each time she attacks. She's just such a good card. And at last but not least, 4 copies of Hellblast Full Dive. You only pay 1 Counterblast to use it, you draw a card, then you superior call a unit from your hand, and if you have 3 or more rear guards, your front row gets plus 10,000 power, and if you're in Final Rush. Such a good card. It's just mandatory to run it. It's just mandatory to use it for. Like, there's no reason not to play this card at 4 at all, just because of how convenient and strong the card is. Now, after watching gameplay of both this deck and the Grade 4 Bruce deck, between the two, I personally think the Grade 3 Bruce is overall better, mainly because of its consistency. But they can both dish out roughly the same amount of attacks. The highest amount of attacks I've seen Bruce do in one turn is 6. But I've heard that both Bruce decks can potentially do 7. And I think I remember a buddy of mine named Riley telling me that they can do 8 as well. I could be wrong though. Bruce may not be a top neither Bruce deck may be top contenders, but overall I feel they're really good in this format. And I also can't wait for that new Bruce unit that's coming out soon that was revealed a few days ago. I hope they make the next batch of Bruce support really good, and I much look forward to seeing what Bushy can do with other new decks they're making as well. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Once again, please leave a like and a subscription for more content. And I hope you all have a nice day. Peace out, yo.